What's up, you guys? This is Devin from CenturyFX Studios, and we're talking about the 24-105 L lens for the Canon EF system. Now, let's get right into it with the build quality. The build quality is great. You don't have to worry about anything. I've used this in rain and snow and pretty much any humane condition that you can possibly think of you going out and shooting an event in. Now, the build quality, you don't have to worry about. Just don't throw it off of a mountain. Don't drown it. It should be fine. I promise you. So don't worry about the build quality. It's second to none. It's an L lens. As far as the focus is concerned, you can go about halfway across the lens with the focus, so a half turn, which is nice. It's nice and smooth. You don't have to worry about any gears or anything like that, going from manual focus to autofocus or overriding the autofocus by manually turning your lens. It has a nice little throw on it, nice for videographers and cinematographers. And next up, it has image stabilization. Now, think about this image stabilization. Now, when you're hand-holding video, it doesn't look good. It looks like crap all the time. You have to clench up. You have to put your elbows on your sides, and you have to really make yourself really still. And it's really hard for a human to stay completely still past this DSLR camera that's really, really heavy, and this lens that's really, really heavy. So, stabilization is great. Stabilization, we're going to give that a test later. Also, the focal distance of 24-105, it's really, really good for the full frame bodies. It's really just like an all-around general purpose focal distance of 24-105. F4 is good for the full frame lenses and stuff like that. F4 is great. You're letting in a decent amount of light, and it's F4 all the way through the lens. So all focal distances, you get all the way open to F4. You don't have to have any variable changing. So it's great for video. It's great stabilization. And let's get right into the next portion of the test. Now, this is the image with the image stabilization off when you're using video. Handheld is not looking good. It never looks good, guys. Especially with all this heavy DSLR equipment. But if you cut image stabilization on, we get a world of a difference. It's better than, way better than, using the image stabilization when it's not on. Or using the lens when the image stabilization is not on. All right, now we're at 24 millimeters. We're comparing the f4 to the f5.6, and it already looks like the f5.6 has just a slight bit more, it's negligible, but it's a slight bit more sharpness on the f5.6 side, and that's in the center. Now, if we go to the edges of the frame, I'm not really seeing a difference, guys. I'm not really seeing a noticeable difference, that is. Maybe the f5.6 is a little bit different, but from f4 to 5.6, I'm not seeing that much of a difference. If I go to the other side, it's not much sharpness. I see a little bit of chromatic aberration that didn't clear up going from f4 to 5.6. And what chromatic aberration is basically those purple, basically fringing lines that go across contrasting edges here. So they just kind of like highlight your edges in purple, and I don't really like that, but you can clean it up in Lightroom if you want to with the lens profile that Lightroom gives you, and you can adjust that varyingly. So chromatic aberration is not the biggest problem, and it's not really what I'm looking for here, but f5.6 definitely looks sharper on this edge of the frame. So let's give the sharpness to f5.6. So if you have the 24-105 and you're looking for sharpness, stop it down from f4 to 5.6. Let's go to f8 here. Let's see here. Let me get this right for you guys. Let's go to f8. All right. At f8, we're seeing some decent sharpness in the center here. That same decent sharpness we've seen from the f4 and 5.6. Let's go to the edges of the frame here. And if I can remember correctly, that it seems just a little bit sharper than the f5.6 version. So let's compare these two. The f5.6 on the right and the f8 on the left. And I'm seeing just a noticeable difference from f5.6 to f8. Just a little bit. Maybe f8 is a little bit sharper, but it's decent. Let's go back to the center. Let's see here. Yep, just seeing a little bit more sharpness on this side than this side. You see the lines here, but I'm really looking at like just notable spots here. Definitely a little bit more contrast here on the f8 side. So let's give it to the f8. I think f8 looks better than 5.6. Usually when you have lenses and you stop them down, they tend to look better. And basically stopping down means going from a wider aperture to a smaller aperture. Now at f11, now this is where the image is supposed to be completely sharp. The lens is not generally as sharp as I want it to be in general, but it's a decent showing from Canon. This is the full frame kit lens on a crop frame 7D, so it's probably not the best image quality that I can show you based off of the fact that it's not a full frame camera using a full frame lens. But let's compare 24mm at f11 to f8. So f8's here on the right and f11's here on the left, and I can see that there's negligible difference. There's really no difference, guys. Maybe I'm losing out to diffraction, but I see a little bit more sharpness on f8 than I do see on f11. So we might be losing out to a little bit of diffraction here. So I wouldn't push this to f11 if I were you guys. I would just stay at f8 if I were doing some landscape stuff and see where that gets you. But a decent showing from the 24-105 Canon L lens. It's the kit lens and it's the version 1. Okay, so now we're going to go to 50mm, which is a prime, portrait focal distance, especially for full frame. But for crop frame sensors, we're a little bit closer, but definitely in a portrait distance. And in the center of the image, we're seeing some nice stuff here. It's nice and decently sharp. I don't see any of that chromatic aberration, if any. Excuse me, I'm not really pixel peeking, but I don't really see any of that chromatic aberration that I saw before. But yeah, when I went to 50mm, that chromatic aberration is gone. I don't see it as much as I did before. Note that there's not much sun behind this image, but I don't see any of that purple fringing that I did before. But it's a decent showing, especially at 50mm. This is nice and consistent throughout the entire frame of the image. Now we're going to go to f8 at 50mm, and I think this is going to be, something quite good from this lens. Yeah, an impressive showing at f8 at 50mm. Again, this is not the sharpest I've seen, but definitely if you're trying to get the best out of this lens, 50mm at f8 is definitely a good showing here in the corners all the way through the center of the image. I have no issues, no chromatic aberrations to clean up in Photoshop. At f11, let's compare that to, this is 50mm at f11. Let's see here. Let's compare these two from f11 to f8. f8 is here on the right, f11 is here on the left. And then again, I think I am seeing just about the same performance here. Just about the same performance. It's a negligible difference here. Yeah, so pretty much stays the same as far as image quality is concerned. We're at 70mm here. And looking at the center of the image and waiting for Lightroom to load, I'm kind of getting some more of that chromatic aberration coming back into the lens. You see the chromatic aberration? It's kind of getting to me, but it's just a little bit. It's negligible at 70mm. This is at f4, I believe. Yeah, f4. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's not like it was at 24mm. And in the edges of the frame, it gets a little bit less sharp. Watch out for that. It gets a little bit less sharp than it was in the center of the frame at 70mm. So watch out for that, guys. We're gonna compare this to the f5.6 of the 70mm, and we're going back to the edge of the frame here. And I don't really see a difference between the two here. You might see a little bit more contrast on the 5.6, just like at previous apertures. So, like I said, it's not the best at f4, guys. Even though it's a constant aperture at f4, it's definitely not the best at f4. So we're going to go to f8 and f11. We're going to compare these two. All right, so we got f8 on the left and f11 on the right. We're going to go to the corner of the image. I'm waiting for Lightroom to load here, and I'm looking at like things that really attract my attention. And definitely, wow, 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 wow. Wow, that's interesting. There's a definitely noticeable difference at 70 millimeters at f8 than it is at f11. I'm seeing a lot more sharpness in the corners at f11 at 70 millimeters than I am, you know, at f8, which a lot of people, this is definitely a night and day sharpness, guys. Like, I had this on a tripod and everything. And the thing is, I'm shooting faster over here than I am over here. And I'm still getting more sharpness out of the f11 because it stopped down. And even in the center of the image here, I see more sharpness in the f11 at 70 millimeters. That is crazy. I thought I was losing out to diffraction at other, you know, focal distances. But I'm definitely seeing at 70 millimeters, it makes a difference from 70, you know, at 70 millimeters here. Yeah, I'm definitely seeing a difference in image quality here. Definitely in the corners. Now in the center of the image is not as, you know, pronounced, but definitely. Now we're going to go to the extent of the lens at 105 here at f4, and here is 5.6 on the right and f4 on the left. And let's go to the corners. I'm gonna wait for Lightroom to load just a little bit. Right now I'm starting to see some chromatic aberration. Some chromatic aberration here at f4. Now at 5.6 it definitely dulling down. Maybe that's based off the position of the sun in the background of this fence, but definitely I'm seeing just a little bit more out of the 5.6 than I am at the 4 end. Now this is the 105, so we're definitely bound to see some image differences. At f4, I'm seeing a little bit more. Wait. I'm seeing a little bit more sharpness out of the. They're negligible. It's just negligible. I'm seeing more contrast out of the f4, but at f5.6. They're not really, one's not too much more sharper than the other. It's negligible in the center here. All right, and this is at the 105 end. So let's go to f8 and f11 here. Okay, in the center of the image, I see more contrast on this side here. I see more contrast. Let's see here, but I see a little bit more sharpness on this side, but it's negligible. Let's go to the corners. Let's see what we see here in the corners. Excuse me, this is at 105 again. Let's see here, and I'm looking at pronounced things that, you know, really highlight themselves, and I see just a tad bit more sharpness here, but overall it's, you know, it's decent all the way around the lens at f8 and f11. Am I seeing chromatic aberration? Nothing that I can just go out and pinpoint. There's definitely, you know, you can see it there, but it's not as pronounced if you zoom out, and if you're not doing anything that really makes the image viewer or distracts the image viewer from seeing what they're needing to see, then it's not that bad. You can clean it up in Lightroom. So with that being said, that's the focal distance test. One thing that I really like about this lens is the fact that it has a macro capability on it. So as far as bokeh is concerned, or the quality of the background blur, seems a little bit distracting to me. You see these fine lines here, and bokeh is basically the quality of the background blur. You know, you just like, say for instance, if we zoom here and we go off into the abyss of blurriness, you know, from focus to blurry, it just looks a little bit distracting. But who's gonna really nitpick? You know, this is a decent showing from this lens. It's just these lines are just a little bit more busy than I want them to be. On a 24 to 105, it's not that bad, especially when you have the macro feature. When you have a macro feature, you can blur out the background a little bit more with compression because you can get closer to your subjects. But Then again, this bokeh is just a little bit busy for me, you know, but you know, clients won't really complain. Okay, so that's it for the 24-105, guys. I'm glad you stick around and watch the video. I think it's a decent focal range, a decent sharpness, and get this lens if you have a crop frame or full frame body. It really doesn't matter, but in some lenses cases, it does. So this is definitely a decent showing, if not good showing, for Canon. I am not sponsored by Canon or Nikon or any other brands. I'm not sponsored by anybody, as a matter of fact. So this is an unbiased review, and you guys keep snapping and keep practicing your photography and continue watching the show.